So today I'm going to be sharing about motivation and engagement for twice exceptional learners using strength-based learning, using esports curriculum for non-traditional students and non-traditional school settings. So as you can tell already from that, I am not in a traditional school setting, and you will be able to hear why and the journey of where I am today. So today, I'm hoping that you'll have three takeaways, which is one, understanding twice exceptionality and the core needs of the students. Many of you might already be familiar with them, but if not, it will be something useful for you to be able to keep in mind, because they are definitely in the classrooms or in various settings that you encounter them. We'll be discussing how to use interests to motivate and engage twice exceptional learners, and also discuss the opportunities and some of the challenges we've faced in trying to integrate esports and NASEF's curriculum into this non-traditional setting. So who am I? I am a doctoral student, a homeschool parent, an educational advocate, a NASEF fellow, a SANG trainer, and I have my graduate certificate in twice exceptional education and work with parents, being able to navigate the education of their twice exceptional children. But most of all, I'm a mom. So, I have all these other things that I've done in my life, but I just say that my driving force right now, and the reason why I'm here today, is because I'm a mom. And you're going to kind of see this woven throughout this presentation. So I am a NASEF scholar, and that is really how I got to know about this particular RCOE meeting. And it's great. I've just been so fascinated listening to everything you've all been talking about. I can't wait to be able to dive back in to some of the presentations and dig deep and be able to visit some of your websites for those of you that have been presenting. It's just been amazing, because this is my first esports conference. And many of you already know that mission of NASEF and the opportunity to be able to provide intentional learning through esports. And so I'm not going to dive into that, but just wanted to make sure that there's that background there. And I love this slide because of how, just showing how NASEF has grown. And I'm hoping to be the next club over there as 2,501 perhaps. But one of the reasons that attracted me to NASEF is just how globally reaching it is, and how much it is open to different ideas and different people as an organization, which has been really impressive. As I mentioned, I am a doctoral student. I completed my graduate certificate in twice exceptional education a year and a half ago, and I'm currently ongoing in a doctorate in education in a program for cognitive diversity in education and leadership and innovation. Bridges Graduate School is a school that I go to. It's a fairly new school that is focused on cognitive diversity. And it was really the vision of various scholars who noticed that there really wasn't a school that could be able to address both gifted and disabled children and education. Maybe there were courses for educators, but there wasn't really a school that was focused on that entirely. It's a distance learning program, and it's been just fascinating being able to be part of it as it continues to grow and what it's been able to do. So because of that, I would be remiss with not starting with explaining what I mean by twice exceptional, so that we are on the same page, because that is really the foundation of what my presentation is about. So twice exceptional children are those who have a strength. It doesn't have to be strengths in every single subject. It could be just one subject, or it could be just creative, that they are really creative. So they could be intellectually gifted or creatively gifted, or whatever other way in which they have high talent and high ability in an area, but then they have complex challenges, and this asynchrony exists even with their development, or even just the way they manifest their disabilities. And they should be having a disability in as defined by federal or state criteria. So they kind of are in that what we call the green state. And you're going to see that I pick green quite a bit here because of that mix of everything that they are. The key thing about twice exceptional children is the masking effect in the classroom. And I bring this up because when I read a lot of the esports curriculum out there, it doesn't really accommodate for people who I can see from the description that they potentially could be twice exceptional. There is curriculum out there for neurodivergent students and SPED students and all that, but just not really that interface of those who are highly gifted, but also have, and I shouldn't use the word highly gifted, I should just say with a talent in a specific area, but also have a disability. But what you find with a lot of twice exceptional students is that their academic output doesn't match their conceptual understanding. So for example, the child who reads way above their grade and has problems and is able to write, but cannot be able to write a paragraph or take wonderful Cornell notes, which are a favorite for a child that I'll be bringing in. And or maybe has got the ability to concentrate really well, but is also often distracted. And you wonder, why aren't they doing this? And you begin to hear those keywords that teachers will bring in, such as, they have such high potential, they're resistant, they're lazy, but really it's because they're going through oscillating between these two worlds of who they are. So when you think about a twice exceptional student, there is no single profile. It's like butterflies. When you look at butterflies, I love butterflies because they're ready to fly and they go through this metamorphosis, just like a 2E student. But what comes out is always different. And the key thing is being able to know that they may have the same learning disability. They may be talented in the same way, but there's no guaranteed pattern, no guaranteed colors. And it's a study. It's actually a continuous research study. So when you look at them and you think about, like in the gaming world, how this would come out, many of them have difficulty beginning or completing tasks. So when you look at some of the things that are put out there for social emotional growth, it's more like you need to finish in order to finally game. So you're basically pulling away the interest in order to be able to accomplish a task that is already a difficulty, or the preference for special tasks, which may have some difficulty with, or the inability to read in some cases, or may have trouble with just the mathematical things, or just organizing thoughts. That's a big one with a lot of neurodivergent children in general. And then there's the impulsivity or the wandering away, squirming, not being able to pay attention, and just all of these things that present themselves in the general ed classroom. And these behavior patterns then begin to affect them from a social and emotional context in terms of being looked at as being defiant or oppositional. And perhaps they aren't. Perhaps they are just over excited and have felt that their sensory needs are either not being met, or they're overstimulated, or they just need a break sometimes. And many of them get perceived as immature or highly mature, but this is the key thing with 2E children, is that it's both ways, and it can be both ways at any given time. I've been reading a number of papers that I love on cognitive and non-cognitive characteristics, because one of the things that fascinates me is this meta-analysis that looks at various cognitive characteristics of 2E students and how they have these high levels of curiosity and independent, and want to be independent and self-sufficient, yet at the same time they're socially withdrawn, have low self-confidence, and aren't quite sure of themselves because they've always been on the branch of either the LD side, the learning disability side, or on the side of you should be able to do this because you have the capabilities. And so that begins to affect them in various ways. And I have other things here, such as slow processing speed and all. I just don't want to go into it. This is more to just give you a higher overview of who is 2E and why we're talking about gaming with them. The key thing to take away is really this, that one, they're uniquely tailored. No particular coat fits, no particular shoe fits. You just have to stitch and not try and put that square peg into a round hole. That's who they are. When you think about them in the classroom, they need that differentiation. And this applies especially when trying to bring in various curriculums, because they need both the strengths to be addressed and their interests and the accommodations for some of the things that drag them behind, and not so much to remediate, but to be able to scaffold and bring them into the fold so that they can be able to be at their very best. So there are 5 key environments for 2E learners, and that must be in place. And one is intellectual. And when I say that, they are constantly curious, constantly looking for these novel ideas, something new, something innovative to be able to try out. They're creative. They need to be able to experience that creative flow, and they need that space to be able to do so. They need a place that is socially safe and where they can be able to find their tribe, which is a huge difficulty for 2E learners, and which is kind of why I ended up in this esports arena. And the physical environment, of course, needs to be accommodating them. And I won't dwell much into emotional today. So as I said, I'm a mom. I am a CEO, a chief enrichment officer is what I call myself. And it's because of my child. I have a child who is 2E and for whom I began to look at how to be able to balance these 5 non-negotiable environments that I just shared with you, because those are gears that constantly need to be moving together in order to be able to provide first safety, and then once they're safe, be able to provide engagement and motivation. So what I decided to do as I explored, different gifted models as well as different SPED models, and also began to learn about the twice exceptional children, I realized that enrichment and creativity needed to be intertwined in everything that they do, and that it wasn't something that you do after school or elsewhere, because it increases engagement and motivation and higher order problem solving and thinking. It creates meaningful project identity. And I think my battery is running low. Sienna, could you please come and fix this for me? I have my local IT expert here who you'll be meeting later. If you could just get the plug-in, I think it's over there. Actually, never mind, I've seen it. Sorry, hold on a second. Thank you for your patience. All right, and just the ability to be able to have these authentic, real-world problems that they can be able to investigate. What you find with a lot of enrichment programs in schools today is that they are left to either the clubs and not really intertwined into the school setting, which is great that we're moving into this world of esports and curriculum, and that Riverside County is doing a wonderful job. I was just fascinated speaking to Mr. Hickman some time ago and hearing all the great things that you're doing and investing, but this is not the same for all schools everywhere. And the key thing to being able to build this enrichment is being able to look at the different intelligences. All gamers are not created equal. All of them may have different skills. Many of them are very strong visually, spatially, but you'll be surprised how many are also really strong in some of these other areas. Of course, engineering is typical for a lot of gamers, but when you think about it, a lot of children game, and therefore they run the spectrum of all of this. And I love multiple intelligence theory because it begins to hone you in to interest-based enrichment, which is an area that I am exploring quite a bit, and is what I have done with my own child in order to be able to get to the point where we came to the idea of gaming. So how did I get here? When you look at NACEF's, there's a NACEF slide that talks about who plays games, and it's only 49% of adults. I am not one of them, just so you know. And 97% of teens that play games. And therefore, this next generation is really growing up in this gaming world and will be coming into the workplace from having been those people that are able to play games and navigate computers in a totally different way. So I began to create what I call the pragmatic individual appraisal, where I began to make a study of various children, and I share this as well with parents when I'm consulting with them, with regards to how do you identify and create a personal brand of your child that is going to help them be able to launch into their careers. And this is really a driver for me because I have had both the pain of IEPs and the pain of accommodations and the joys of gifted world, but where it's not quite fitting in. So nothing exactly fits. And that's when I began to explore this, this particular notion based on my experience with regards to branding and marketing, which I've been doing for the last 17 years until last year. But the goal is to be able to ensure that these children find their innovative and creative place and their happy place. And the way to be able to do it is just an example, is with creating an inventory. We did, and I'll dive into this a bit later, but we did a survey of children who are gamers and tried to look at what are they really interested in. And it was surprising to find that, of course, not all of them are the same. And trying to bring them together to do Scholastic Esports was actually a challenge because they had very divergent ideas of what gaming should be, a gaming club should look like. And we began, when one of the things that I realized is that we needed to understand their strengths so that we can weave in those strengths into the gaming club and are still working on it. We need to be able to identify their challenges and barriers. As it mentioned, safety is key. The sense of purpose, which I believe strongly that video games and esports are able to weave in that sense of purpose and identity, and consider personal branding as an iterative process. So I have a 13-year-old who you'll meet in a moment, and he nagged me for a year, telling me that, Mom, do you know that there's something called Scholastic Esports? And do you know that people earn money out of it? Mom, do you know? And I was like, Mom is not going to let you, first of all, even play video games if I could help it. But I finally gave in. And I decided, you know what, you're going to be starting homeschooling for high school. We are going to focus on interest-based schooling. If I believe this, I might as well apply it and stop relying on the school system, which I'd relied on for very long to be able to shape your interest-based learning from a 2E perspective. So without much ado, I sent out messages I joined various homeschool groups, and I said, hey, would anyone be interested in putting together a group and we can be able to work on using the NASEF curriculum? And hence we launched what we called Sencal Esports with a group of other passionate moms. And we reached out to HSEL. We didn't know that at that time that NASEF had any leagues, and we tried to reach out to local schools to see if we could join their leagues, and they weren't willing to join. Therefore, we decided we could start our own thing. And we reached out to HSEL, and they gave us a boundary and let us be able to join to create the first homeschool esports league in California that's official. These are the moms that we launched it with that joined me in it, and are looking to me to be able to come up with the next level of where we're going, which I'm hoping would be more integrated with the regular school system as well, so that these students are able to meet each other and even be able to compete with each other. But we were brought together simply because our children like to play, and we were willing to take the risk with new curriculum that we hadn't used. This is the region that we were given by HSEL as an area that you could be able to create the Sencal esports team with and be able to put them into leagues for. Of course, we verify that they are true bona fide homeschoolers, whether it is on their own through private homeschooling or if it is through public charters in this region of Central California. As I said, we are continuing to look for partnerships with other virtual schools and even with school districts that are willing to let us participate virtually so that we can give our kids that sense of connection and collaboration as they continue. So NASEF, many of you are already familiar with the NASEF curriculum, and I bring this up as a fellow for NASEF. And I went and looked at it, and we thought maybe English 9 would be the best thing to do since all of us had 9th graders. So we started with an English and language arts curriculum. I'm still very intrigued about other sectors and other pathways that are there, but right now we wanted to be able to first of all test it and see how would that work for us, which is what I'm going to be diving into. And then we created what we're calling it a co-op, but really it's now a varsity team based on early game design, and we divided it up. Could you please put off that phone for me? It's on the other side, and you can bring it over. And we decided that parents would teach these particular units and we would teach this collaboratively. And really, the homeschool environment is not one where we're able to follow things together as complete classes because you're not with the students every day. So we had to think about what was key for community and for collaboration and what was key for individual training by the parents. The one thing that you find when you are launching this kind of a program amongst us is the fact that all of these parents are very heavily invested with their children and they take part in some of the education. So this is one of the challenges that we ran into, is making sure that we are being able to have the same outputs for children who are also in various settings. Some are in a public charter that needs to meet the California standards, and such as mine, we're in a public charter where we're meeting the standards that are required from a California perspective, and others are following their own adventure, which is not necessarily looking at all of the standards. So the value to exactly what assignments or units or how it gets done or rubrics is not going to be exactly the same because we're not looking for the same thing. So we agreed that where we would be able to converge is in this area with these 3 units. Particularly because we of course want to be able to inspire our children for their careers, which is the esports ecosystem. We needed to be able to do the game on to be able to just establish the history of esports and where we're coming from and what's happening. And then they can't wait to be in the creator's journey and be able to begin to create. That is something that they've already begun to explore. And I think it's going to fit in really well. I'm looking forward to that. And then the other thing that we found that we had to do to be able to customize this curriculum was look at what the charter required, the public charters required from a California perspective, and be able to make sure that the NASEF curriculum and the units that we chose merged and were able to work together. So we picked things that we knew could be able to create community, because that's a big deal in the homeschooling community. B, could be done virtually and in person as needed. And C, would be able to meet requirements for California state requirements for ELA 9, but also give the flexibility for those parents who want to be able to explore other things or maybe are homeschooling for other reasons. And then we set off and we were excited and we put it out there and we created dates and we decided when we're going to be meeting in person, and we're excited. We're excited to begin this. We currently meet in person every 2 weeks. We do meet online every single week, and we also have practice days for the teams, which each team, right now we've only had, we had hoped to be able to include all of these games, but it turned out that not all the kids were interested in these games. And so we only have our a Rocket League team, Valorant team. Of course, there are kids who are doing chess and Minecraft on their own. And what other team do we have? I think League of Legends. And so these students began to practice, and we began to get into all of the excitement of getting to know each other and them learning not to rage, learning not the social emotional side of gaming together, especially most of these, remember, have been playing alone or with people that they find online, not we are a team, we are going to do this together. So they've been having to learn some of that, communicating with each other. Well, let's not cuss because that's not something that we have agreed on at Sencal Esports. Let's have a leader and listen to the leader, and just that kind of thing in terms of captains and leadership and collaboration. It's been an exciting time. We've also had quite a number of challenges, which I won't dive into today unless we have some time at the end. So NASEF's curriculum is what I want to talk about some more today, and what that has looked like and exactly how it fits in from an interest perspective because of the opportunities that it presents. So I have, like I said, I have a special treat today. Come over. Please bring the phone as well so that I can time us. So I have a special treat today, and that is my son. My son was identified as gifted when we lived in the Bay Area and was part of a gifted program. And then later on, we found out that he's also autistic. And he was the one who really got me into this twice exceptional world and has gotten me into NASEF. And I don't know what you're going to take me to next. Anyway, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Siama. I'm 13.
I'm sorry, can you see him? Because I can't really see the video. Can you all see him?
We can see him.
Okay, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Sianwa. I'm 13 and I'm in 9th grade.
Okay. And so, Sianwa, what are some of your interests, since we're talking about interest-based learning and what that looks like?
I like playing video games and reading.
Reading a lot, right? He started reading when he was 2 years old, reading whole books. And have you always enjoyed the school content? Not Friends. I know you love Friends anywhere. Content.
No.
Why?
Because it's really kind of boring and repetitive.
Yeah, and this is something that I've heard since he was 7 years old, has been, Mommy, why do I have to go to school? Or why is it so repetitive? And that masking began to come into play because he then wouldn't produce, and the teachers would say maybe he doesn't know, and I'm like, I'm sure he knows. Anyway, so this year we started homeschooling so that he could be able to explore his interests, and we are at the point where we started with ELA. He loves to read and can read anything, but had begun to struggle a lot with ELA in the last year, right? And what was one of the big things that you didn't like about ELA history, homeroom? Essays, okay. And so this year, since we started homeschooling, one of the essays that he did was an expository persuasive essay on the benefits of playing video games, on the benefits of esports, and why parents should allow their children to play video games. This is I cut out a bit of an annotated bibliography that he did. He created this, and we're going to dive into what that looked like for him, because at the end of this essay, he had 1,701 words, which I never expected. I didn't have to drive. I just had to say, today you're doing your ELA essay, and it would get done without continuous prompts, which I am always prompting, right? Or rather reminding you to be able to get tasks done. But this he did without having to be reminded and doing the research himself. So what was different than other essays that you have written with this essay?
Well, I had fun writing it and cared more about it because it's not like writing random stuff in books in school.
Okay. And by the way, I had him write out kind of what he wants to say because he's also really shy. And then what do you mean about you cared more about this particular one?
Well, it's more fun to read and write about why parents should let kids be able to play video games than it is to say write about why Gary Paulson made the berries red in the hatchet.
And I haven't read Gary Paulson and the berries red and the hatchet, but that what was challenging about that? Okay, this is off script now.
It was just really boring, and there was actually no hidden meaning.
No hidden meaning.
We had to make some stuff up.
Okay, so what did you find most difficult about writing this essay? Because it wasn't like just a breeze.
Finding like a reliable, smart-sounding information that I could understand.
Smart sounding, reliable information. And so if you couldn't find it, what did you do?
I learned how to use. You taught me how to use Google Scholar. I just put in the topic of the article and put in the year that the research was supposed to be done in, and then I pressed the search button, and then it would find articles.
Okay, and then another thing that I talked about scaffolding with twice exceptional students, and one of those is things like Perla. So it's great to learn about MLA citations. He's able to conceptualize exactly what is needed and why references are needed, but it's always a struggle because it holds him back from being able to complete assignments. So I introduced you to Perla, which is a reference manager. There are many reference managers out there, of course. And what did you think about using that instead of an outline that was in the NASEF curriculum?
It was much easier than just writing the actual notes, just like or citations, because it just did it for me.
And then you were able to double check them, but also you were able to then read these academic papers and look at the findings. This was his first time looking at academic papers. Did you have an opinion on one of them? There was one that didn't quite resonate with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the effects of video games on cognitive function.
Yeah, so that was a little bit difficult, but then the other academic papers were actually exciting for him because, again, there's that novelty, there's that intellectual stimulation that twice exceptional children need, but then there was also the interest from an esports perspective. And then using the reference manager took away the things that drag him down and helped him to be able to get to this point where he wrote 1,701 words. And Gabby, just keep me honest with time because we could go on and on here. And then the next essay was a personal narrative. So I had him select, first of all, 2 books that he wanted to read about for personal narratives, and then write his own personal narrative, of which I required only 400 to 500 words, but he ended up with 896 words. And, Sianwa, every time I looked around, I'd find you at the dining table, at your desk, and you're typing and smiling, like grinning. And I'm wondering, what is it that you're doing? And you'd say you were doing this particular narrative. what made you keep writing even without being prompted or being reminded that, hey, your narrative is due?
Well, it was fun because I was writing because it was a script for a podcast episode I was gonna do.
Hmm. Who decided that they would do the podcast episode?
Me.
Exactly. So I never asked him to do this podcast. He decided that he would do his narrative for a podcast. And my first inclination was to say, no, 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 that's not what the goal is for the narrative. Then I thought, we are doing interest-based schooling and we are doing twice exceptional schooling. So you are going to have the opportunity to write it for the audience that you're thinking about. So he did write it. It was very casual at first, right, in terms of the language. And my first reaction was, you can't write like this. Then I thought, it's a different audience. And he displayed the difference in terms of skills of writing from the narrative to the expository essay, which was more informational and persuasive. Um, Another thing with regards to this, in terms, apart from that authenticity of launching it on your podcast, and by the way, these are things that are not things that I've ever told him to do. He just came and told me, Mom, I'm starting a podcast. Mom, I'm doing this. And so we've leveraged what his interest is and what he's excited about into something authentic that he could actually put out to the world. Um, and then at the very beginning, I went into the books and I followed exactly what was in the NASF curriculum and in all of the California required standards and all, and removed a plot diagram. And I was like, let's talk about this. And his first reaction was, Mom, why do I have to do this every single year of school? And I was taken aback because remember, we had just started homeschooling. And I asked, what is it that you don't like about plot diagrams?
It limits how I can do the story because I have to write out the whole thing. And sometimes there's multiple climaxes, multiple rising actions, not all just in a line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's much more difficult to write it out in a plot diagram than it is, and it's easier to just find it, write the story as you go.
Okay, and that's interesting. This was interesting to me because all along in all of our IEP days and in SPED, and in the general ed classroom with his IEPs was we are going to use a lot of visual organizers and help him be able to use them. But repetition doesn't work for twice exceptional students. They like that novelty. And then secondly, they need that creative flow, and creativity and freedom to just flow is killed by some of these diagrams when he has already learned the concept because they learned it already. Therefore, they don't need to relearn it every single year. So I killed the idea of the plot diagram and decided to let him flow. And that's how we ended up with a narrative that he was able to post. And then now that we've talked about like plot diagrams, another thing that is typically there with fictional stories is giving you a prompt. And Siano has written a lot of like stories on his own that you've enjoyed writing, that were your own stories with characters and that kind of thing, and really long books since he was 9 years old. But do you like writing fictional stories with a prompt?
No.
Why?
Writing fictional stories with a prompt basically limits my characters and topics that I can write about.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that if you are given a game story, like here's a prompt for a game, for something that will turn into a video game, and it's been outlined and the limitation is there, would you write it and why?
I would because I like video games
Mm-hmm.
and it's written out for me, but then it's actually much easier because sometimes video games have a lot of openness, so you can just choose what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, that's my alarm saying we have 15 more minutes. And enter another item that was there with regards to the NASF curriculum, which was a multimedia presentation. So we challenged all of the children to create presentations about a game and break down the elements of a narrative. So this was to be able to learn the elements of a narrative. So in the past, have you enjoyed presenting in front of people?
No.
Yeah, and how did this presentation differ from the past? Because I saw you present and I was so impressed.
Because this presentation was a lot more fun. I got to talk about what I liked, and it was with my friends who also like gaming.
Mm-hmm.
And this presentation was about a game.
Okay, so friends with a shared passion and interest-based passions, and that interest has brought them together. Some of them are neurodivergent, some of them are not. We have a real mix of students, and they're all different ages actually. And he enjoyed presenting this. He just came alive, which surprised me, and was so comfortable and comical. He can be very comical, and was comfortable also using this breakdown of the elements of a story and giving the story overview, the characters, the setting, the things that you find in a typical plot diagram. Um, so you mentioned that you don't like plot diagrams and that really limits you, but you were engaged to do this presentation. And why were you engaged to do it? And would you prefer an essay or a presentation for this kind of assignment?
So for the first question, what made me engaged to do it? Well, it was a game I was already playing and that existed, so it was easier for me to write it because it was a story all written out, and I was supposed to do a story map, and it was much easier because it showed where the I was supposed to show the elements of a story, and it's a story already written out. So yeah,
Or rather, the game already exists and you are in the middle of playing it, right? At that
yes.
particular time. So it was just that immediate relevance. And then what would you prefer, a presentation or an essay?
Presentation, because
Why?
presentations are more visual, and essays are just long papers.
Long papers, but you did other essays
Which just
that
words.
were long, except that those were of interest. So I think another thing here is with the with the presentation was really just the relevance and the opportunity for choice, and being able to put that in and using strengths for production and for visual spatial. One of Sianwa's strongest skills when he's had to do um, neuropsychs has been like on the extreme high end in visual spatial skills. And that means that anything visual and building and that kind of thing makes it really important for him to be able to connect to productivity. And so one of the things that you find whenever you're thinking about esports and curriculum is also realizing that it's not just bundling um, curriculum into what needs to be learned. It's also giving that opportunity for choice of productivity and relevance for 2E learners. So it's like taking it that extra step. Whether it is there are those who love to write essays, or in his situation, he likes to write essays when they're of interest, or building, whether they might be just those people who are able to put together a Lego presentation to be able to show what they've learned, or narrating, or documentaries, or presentations. And it's not always one size fits all, which is really difficult, I know, in the classroom, but it's something that can be collaborated with parents, because a lot of 2E parents are at their wits' end and trying to figure out, what do I do to be able to engage this child to motivate them for learning? And for me, we started off knocking heads, and have knocked heads a lot even when he was in the classroom. But being able to give in and go down this route of esports has actually freed me a lot for a lot of subjects where I just send him to work on something. Um, I want to bring up something, and I know we don't have we didn't discuss this, but one of the other things, wait 1 second. One of the other things that you did was the personality test,
Mhm.
to be able to look at what careers you're fit for. What did you think about that, or what did it reveal for you?
Mm, it showed that I would be most likely to work in the game design,
Mm-hmm.
and then the second was law.
Mm-hmm.
Game design I wanted to do, and law my dad was saying he wanted me to do.
And then I had you, as a next step, be able to look at universities that offer game design. Had you ever known that there were game design opportunities in the country, an actual course like that?
Mm, yes, yes.
And so what did you find in terms of your research? Was it enlightening in any way?
Hmm. Yeah, I found out there was a lot more colleges that had good game design courses
Mm-hmm.
than I thought.
Okay. All right, I'll let you go.
Mhm.
But I wanted to just bring up this. I need to keep this because I need the time. Please shut the door behind you. About the need for exposure to universities. Now, we had gotten to the point with his education because of the fact that he didn't like school, where he would say, I'm going to be a woodchucker because I don't really want to be able to do anything else. And woodchuckers don't need to do math. They don't need to do ELA. They don't need to do history. But now once he's been home, he loves history again. And he's been able to explore history quite a bit and is giving me stories about it because we're having that ability to work to scaffold. And with regards to universities, yes, he says he knew about it, but it's because I took him to a university expo, a college expo, and he visited the UCI booth and learned that there was an actual course called game design, and then thereafter was more interested in it. Is it more work to remind him that you need to try and do this? Yes, which is why I decided to follow this exposure and exploration model, where I said, well, this is going to be your assignment. It's going to be to research game design. In the process, he's learning how to organize information, how to identify, and at the same time, it's inspiring and motivating him to see there is an opportunity. So now let's work on your math, because you see, math is required in order to be able to enter these courses. And it's just begun to come alive step by step for him, where there's been a lot of resistance because of the model that he's been exposed to in the past. And that brings in, of course, the NASEF ecosystem, which is currently where we are with regards to ELA. We are exploring the NASEF ecosystem with the students. And it's been very revealing to me that homeschoolers tend to either be homeschooling for personal reasons, medical reasons, religious reasons, or just the fact that they have children who are different, just like I do. And with such kids, which is kind of what we've ended up with in our group, some of them are way ahead in some areas. I have some who are doing high school math when they are in middle school, and then they can't be able to read, and others need to be able to get help writing. So it's kind of like that asynchrony again. They don't say that they're 2E, but you can really tell that there's that twice exceptional, that is synchrony that is typically found in twice exceptional students. And when we've been sharing more about the NASEF ecosystem and different jobs that are out there, it's really come alive for them. Because much as they are really strong in certain areas and have been exposed to certain careers, they just thought that all that they could ever do is maybe go into engineering. A lot of them are mathematical, but had not thought about all of these different ways in which they could be able to work on things. And that is kind of where we are with Sianwa, has been him beginning to find an excitement with regards to, would I really go to college? So what are my NASEF fellow interests? I am really interested in building out this Sencal esports and homeschool and virtual learners, and being able to look at that community model that they really need, as well as how to be able to build creativity and inspire those careers that I'm passionate about. Looking at choice exceptional learners and the executive function, and using a project management kind of module. Now, a lot of EF is, and he does a class actually on directed studies and EF, and all that they do is tell you how to plan and tell you when to finish something before you actually go and do the next thing. But as you can see, when interests are and choice in type of production is involved, he motivates himself to go and do it, and he organizes himself. I just say, this is the time, these are the fixed times for your day. Write out your fixed times for the day, and let's talk about the flex things that need to be done today before you get to anything else. And he knows I have practice at this time, but I also have got this particular thing that I need to complete. And when that practice comes, we let him go ahead and do it, whether or not he has finished everything, and then come back to it because he knows these are my goals for the day, and I set them. So just that whole project management and thinking ahead, learning how to break down things from a work breakdown perspective. And I think I failed to mention that I have a PMP. I used to be a PMP certified, but I haven't been keeping up with my license. Therefore, I have this project management perspective whenever I think of marketing, and that's really what I'm going to be bringing to the table. And then I'm East African, I'm from Kenya, and I've been thinking about more of culturally responsive perspectives to using gaming, video games, and esports in education in Africa. And then there is some personal exploration. This was inspired by my kids, especially with Sianwa. One time we were sitting down around and we're like, okay, let's do a devotional together. And he literally got a video game and played it out to whatever Bible verses we were playing. So that's been something that I've been looking at as well. And how can churches begin to stop resisting some of them are really good at this, but then stop using video games just as a play time to connect, but also as a time to be able to continue to teach whatever they're teaching in the various religions and situations that they're in. So that's really my NASEF interest. I'm almost done here. I always think about health and well-being because social and emotional is a big deal. And I love this particular NASEF acronym on health and well-being. It's something that I think about. I don't really look at it, like I said, from this perspective where it is prior to gameplay, but it is integrated with everything else that you do, that it is that you are all these people. So how do we include all of these things in your well-being? How do we make sure that if you're going to play, that you're playing with others, that you're connecting, that you're talking, and that kind of thing? So it is the same, it's just a different lens for SEL. So if you want to learn more about choice exceptionality, I'm actually hosting a conference this weekend that we've been planning for a while, and it's a first neurocultural symposium that Bridges 2E Center is going to be hosting. We have a lot of good scholars that are going to be talking about being 2E. It's not related to gaming, but I just wanted to put it out there in case someone was interested about 2E. We actually have some of these scholars who are neurodivergent themselves, and we'll be speaking about their experience getting their doctorates and being where they are, and yet being neurodivergent and having to navigate various systems. And all of them represent different types of cultures, whether it's Native American, Hispanic, African American, Asian American, and more. And then there are some resources here. I'll share it just in case you want to read some more about choice exceptionality. But any questions?
I just want to say that I appreciate your presentation. I enjoyed it a lot, and your son did a fantastic job. So
he was really nervous, so I'm glad that he.
Are we all? Well, the way you prepped him, the way you prepped was great. It worked out great, and it makes me think about. So I have a 17-year-old in the family. So and she's again, she's been in dance since she was 3, and been doing this forever, and she wants to get into theater arts, but she's having a trouble time with mathematics. It makes me think okay, so, there's a niche there. There's a way to get her interest into a mathematics item as what is that approach? So I'm glad you found esports to do that.
Yeah, or dance. You could combine dance and whatever else.
Right. So it's a way you got to get the trick, right? You got to hook up somehow. So I really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you. I'm going to check okay, I don't see anything in the chat. So my challenge to any of you who are in the educational system and have esports team, please join, invite us to be able to be part of your team one day. That would be really fun for our kids. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Juniette, and thank you to your son as well for sharing his experience. Great presentation. Yeah, we hope you stick around for the rest of the presentations as well. So the next session will be 5:10. Okay, thank you so much.